There's more than one way to cover what the President of the United States did and said publicly today. It's an extraordinary day, and it's a difficult day to find the right approach to what happened in the Trump presidency today. Our first approach to the Trump news today, even a few hours ago, was to do what we usually do, which is deal with the policy and political implications of a series of comments the president made today that no other president or politician would ever say or do, like threatening to close our southern border, something that the Republican leader of the Senate says would be catastrophic economically, something that would shut down the American automobile manufacturing industry, and yes, something that would mean the United States would run out of guacamole in 3 weeks, literally 3 weeks. That's the official calculation on what Mexico's avocado supply means to the United States. But things got stranger than usual with the president today. He said things for which there is no easy explanation. He said his father wasn't born in the United States. His father was born in New York. Usually with a Trump lie, you can easily figure out what he's trying to accomplish with the lie, but not today. The president struggled to pronounce a very simple word, and he repeatedly could not do it. What does that mean? We have grown accustomed to the vagaries and strangeness of Donald Trump's public behavior, but this was a day where the strangeness dominated, both the strangeness of the policy positions and the strangeness of the president's public behavior and public words. And in his final comments, public comments of the day, he said this tonight at a Republican fundraiser in Washington.
If you had a normal president, I don't want to say that negatively, I think I'm very normal, but if you had a normal, you know what I mean. In other words, if you had a stiff as president, which most of them are, I hate to say.
How often do you hear a normal person say, I think I'm very normal? Have you ever heard a president of the United States feel compelled to publicly announce, I think I'm very normal? Does that mean he knows he's not normal? There are a bunch of important questions, urgent questions about the president today that political analysis cannot answer. Political expertise cannot answer some of these questions. And that's why, along with our political analysts tonight, we're going to be joined by a psychiatrist in our leadoff discussion of what the president did and said today. Donald Trump is a 72-year-old man whose father had Alzheimer's and died in New York 93 years after he was born in New York. And today, Donald Trump said this about his father, Fred Trump, whose picture the president keeps right behind his desk in the Oval Office.
My father is German, right? Was German, and born in a very wonderful place in Germany, and so I have a great feeling for Germany.
A wonderful place in Germany. What place? His father was born in New York, just like Donald Trump. Donald Trump's grandfather was born in Germany. What does it mean when you confuse where your father was born with where your grandfather was born? My father was born in Boston. My grandfather was born in Ireland, and I have never once confused that. But then I'm not 72 years old, I don't have Alzheimer's in my family history, and I'm not the President of the United States trying to convince NATO that I'm not just being mean when I ask NATO countries to spend more money on their military. That's what Donald Trump was actually talking about today when he said that his father was born in Germany. He repeatedly said that the United States spends much more on defense than we actually do. And that is the kind of Trump falsehood that we probably wouldn't even mention tonight. But in any other presidency, that would actually be the hot news of the day. The president doesn't even know how much money we spend on defense. That would be big news in any other presidency. Watching the president today, you had a right to wonder whether the president simply likes to exaggerate how much we spend on defense or actually cannot learn the real number of what we spend on defense. You had a right to wonder today if there's something wrong with the workings of the president's mind, especially if you watched him repeatedly struggle to say the word origin. What kept coming out was something that sounded like oranges.
And I hope that this investigation now, which is finished. It's totally finished. No collusion, no obstruction. I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation, the beginnings of that investigation. You look at the origin of the investigation, where it started, how it started, who started it, whether it's McCabe or Comey or a lot of them. Where does it go? How high up in the White House did it go? You will all get Pulitzer Prizes, okay? You're going to all get Pulitzer Prizes. You should have looked at it a long time ago. And that's the only thing that's disappointing to me about the Mueller report. The Mueller report, I wish, covered the oranges, how it started, the beginnings of the investigation, how it started.
He said oranges twice. Then he successfully said the word origin, which apparently gave him the confidence to try to say it one more time. And when he tried to say it one more time, he said oranges again. I don't know what that is. I have my own struggle with words. You see that here, but it's simply a struggle to suppress my native Boston accent in favor of speaking American. It's not that I try to say a very simple word and I can only get out the first two letters before I change that simple word into a completely different word repeatedly. What is that? What was happening to the President of the United States today? The president recently decided to order his Justice Department to switch sides in a legal case from defending the Affordable Care Act in court, as the Justice Department is supposed to do with all federal laws, to opposing the Affordable Care Act in court, which is an unprecedented position taken by the Trump Justice Department. The president did that against the wishes of the top Republican in Congress, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. It is a politically disastrous position for the president to take, as Mitch McConnell knows, and as every Republican in Congress knows, but the president did it anyway. In any other politician, if any other politician did that, we would be questioning his or her neurological health tonight. That's how politically crazy that is, but we've grown accustomed to that with Donald Trump. The president has been pretending that he has a health care plan ready to pass and be signed into law as soon as the Supreme Court strikes down Obamacare, but no one believes that. And today, Mitch McConnell said he finally got the president to stop saying that.
Is there a distance between you, President, on what he wants to do on health care and where you see the health care debate standing right now?
Yeah, not any longer. We had a good conversation yesterday afternoon, and I pointed out to him the Senate Republicans' view on dealing with comprehensive health care reform with the Democratic House of Representatives. So I made it clear to him we were not going to be doing that in the Senate, so we don't have a misunderstanding about that. We'll not be doing comprehensive in the Senate.
And minutes after Mitch McConnell said that, Donald Trump said this.
Did Mitch McConnell ask you to delay this?
No, I wanted to delay it myself. I want to put it after the election because we don't have the House. So even though the health care is good, really good, it's much better than when the plan comes out, which we'll be showing you at the appropriate time. It's much better than Obamacare. So when the plan comes out, you'll see it.
It's much better than Obamacare. It doesn't exist, but it's much better than Obamacare. Not a word of the Trump health care plan exists anywhere, not on a notepad, nowhere, but it's much better than Obamacare. What do you call that? There is a political discussion to be had about this, and there is a psychiatric discussion to be had about this. And that is why we are leading off our discussion tonight with Dr. Prudence Gorgashan, a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst and past president of the American Psychoanalytic Association. Also with us, Ron Klain, a former senior aide to President Obama and former chief counsel to the Senate Judiciary Committee. He knows the workings of the White House and the Senate and knows the kind of dynamics that go on between Mitch McConnell and President Trump in a situation like this. And Adam Jentleson is with us. He's the former deputy chief of staff to former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. He knows the workings of Mitch McConnell's mind on these matters very well. He's joined us before on this subject. But Doctor, I want to start with you. This is one of those days, as every day is, but this is the day where it just became overwhelming, where in watching the president, it became imperative that we once again check in on a psychiatric view of what it is we're watching when we're watching Donald Trump in these situations?
Well, I feel like you asked me here kind of on a house call tonight. It was a very strange day, even for Donald Trump. I think what he'll say tomorrow, I predict, is that he meant to say his grandfather was born in Germany. He was clearly struggling to kind of locate his thoughts and his memories, and he'll just segue out of that by saying he meant his grandfather. The word finding problem, I didn't hear him saying oranges. To me, he had the first two syllables of the word, and he couldn't remember the end of it. That's what it sounded like to me. And then he substituted beginning and the start of, and then he wanted to go back to it. So, yeah, I can't do a neurologic exam just watching the tape today. If he were a normal leader, to use his phrase, he would seek an evaluation. If he were CEO of a big company and he found himself forgetting words or making mistakes like grandfather and father, conflating them, he'd seek a neuropsychiatric evaluation, and willingly, eagerly, to see if he was having cognitive difficulties. But I don't think he'll do that.
And Doctor, when you see him tonight standing up there in front of an audience after a day like today, or any day, saying things like, I'm perfectly normal, I think I'm perfectly normal. In your experience, and I'm not saying, I don't mean Donald Trump particularly, since you have no experience with him, but in your clinical experience in dealing with people and the way they talk about themselves, does that kind of comment about oneself tell us anything about that person?
Well, we have a concept called the unprovoked denial. So, if you say, I am not a liar, and nobody asked you if you were, you wonder why the person is bringing it up. So it comes under the heading of unprovoked denial, and it's kind of like, okay, well, I didn't ask you if you were normal, so why is it on your mind? He clearly sounded very, very stressed and anxious today, and if anybody is going to have more with the slightest bit of difficulty cognitively, just in general, if they're under a lot of stress, it's going to show itself. If there's a tiny bit, a mild cognitive difficulty, you're going to see a lot more of it in a stressful situation.
The unprovoked denial. I've just written it down. And Ron Klain, I think that's going to be a graphic that you will be seeing describing other segments we will be doing on this show in the future. The unprovoked denial. Your reaction to Ron Klain, to what you saw the president doing today?
Well, look, I'm not a doctor and I can't diagnose it, but what I can say is, as someone who's watched this for 2 years and seen a lot of craziness come out of the Oval Office, today was like the Beethoven's Fifth of craziness from Donald Trump. It was just an endless array of ridiculous things. The things you showed, obviously, at the top of the show, Lawrence, but also the president announced that we could solve the border problem if we could just get rid of judges. He announced that, he announced that basically he set up a task force to deal with the problem that his task force that's going to shut the border is going to create. He announced that he has a health care plan, except that he doesn't, except that he would have one, except that Mitch McConnell asked him not to, except that he's going to have one after the election. I mean, it really was. In an administration where every single day looks like this is really one of the most notable days of exceptional nuttiness coming from the White House.
Adam Jenelson, I think you and I and Ron, certainly, we first look at all these things politically. We look at them in terms of a governing analysis and political analysis. But today was a day where I had to surrender the political analysis. That's why I wanted the doctor on. But to stick with the political analysis, the president turns the Justice Department around and says, I want you to attack the Affordable Care Act in court. Mitch McConnell thinks that's a disastrous thing for the president to do. And that is something that just that alone, if any other White House was doing that, everyone in Washington would be using the word crazy about that White House.
Yeah, that's right. You won't hear me say this very often, but I agree with Mitch McConnell. It's an insane thing to do.
Yes.
The president was having a decent run of positive news, and then by ordering the Justice Department to do this, he put the news squarely in Democrats' turf. I mean, healthcare is the single most motivating issue to Democrats. It's an issue we used very strongly to take back the House in 2018, and it's just inexplicable for the president to put it back in enemy territory like this. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
And Doctor, I wanted to ask you one more thing about the president, and this is something that's Republican Senator Lamar Alexander said about the president, thinking, and he was intending to compliment him. He said, even people who don't like him, when they are with him, are impressed with how easily he works a room. I think he likes people. He lives in the moment. He's not thinking of the next day or even the next hour or the next person. He's that kind of personality. Doctor, what kind of personality is that?
Well, I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I'd throw the situation back to the political side because, again, as I said earlier, he seems extremely stressed. None of us functions, whatever our functional level is, whatever our best functional level is, none of us is there all the time. So if you see somebody slipping from their usual level, that indicates they're under a lot of stress and tension. And I wonder if there's some political tension going on that makes him look particularly vulnerable and scattered today. Does he live in the moment? I think he's constantly strategizing to figure out how to make himself look good. And so I don't know if I'd agree with Senator Alexander.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. We have a commercial break coming up. Dr. Prudence Gergeshaw, Ron Klain, Adam Jettelson, thank you all for starting off our discussion tonight. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.